Welcome back. I'm Sam Hedden, and I have a very special guest that we will be interviewing today. Her name's Antonia Felix. She's local native to Minnesota. She's an author, educator, and a musician, and I have the pleasure of being able to talk to her. She has 22 books out. She's been on the New York Times best-selling list. Obviously, your eyes were opened by a lot of things. I'm assuming your education endeavors, being able to go to other countries has probably opened some of your eyes. The books that you write, is there one in particular that really, when you were done with it, you're like, wow, like it really stood out to you compared to the rest of the ones you've written?
As far as really learning new things
Right.
that had not come across my experience before.
Right.
I think that my writing about Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor did a lot of that for me. I went to Puerto Rico to do some of my research. I had to study this federal court system, which I didn't know really anything about before I took on this project. And learning about her trajectory, you know, growing up as a kid, a native New Yorker, living up in the Bronx, and doing well in her own schools, you know, getting to the top and being the co-valedictorian of her school. But what she, you know, what she experienced when she got to Princeton as an undergrad, and how she dealt with realizing that her skills had to be ramped up a lot as her academic writing and everything else in order to get to the level of her white peers, who were, most of whom had gone to prep schools and traveled the world and all of that sort of thing. It was like being on another planet for her, and having to realize when she got a paper back that was from a professor that was completely marked up, and here she thought she was, you know, doing okay as a writer, but then facing that reality, it was very inspiring for me to learn how she handled that. It said so much about what character is.
Right.
Where she just went back to that professor and said, okay, I need help with this, and how are we going to turn this around? And she worked very, very hard. And by the time, that was her freshman year when she got that wake-up call, by the time she graduated as a history major 4 years later, she won the top academic award at Princeton.
Wow.
So all of that was there, but she needed to, you know, some other person may have just kind of given up and said, this is too hard, or they're expecting too much of me, or whatever excuses we all can come up with. Instead, she just took it upon herself to do her very best and stretch herself and learn, which is why we want to get an education in the first place, right? But here she was, a brilliant individual who had a chance through affirmative action to go to an Ivy League school and bring out everything that she was, all of her talent and scholarship and everything else. And now she's a Supreme Court Justice. That's such a great story. Wow. And it's inspiring. It says so much about character. It says so much about what the obstacles are in this country to real success for people of color, and how worthwhile affirmative action is. Right. She's not ashamed to say she got into Princeton through affirmative action. It does what it's supposed to do, regardless of the bad rap that it gets by, you know, people who don't really understand it that well. So that book had a big impact on me, and gave me a lot of pride in her as an individual, but you know, how her whole family worked and where she came from. It was it opened up a lot for me about the world.
I was curious to know, did you run into any personal discrimination in your chosen field? You've done so many things. I mean, you've written plays, and you've just written, and did someone just look at you and say, well, you're a woman, or I don't know,
you're white
not
and
right
they're
for
not,
this, or any of that kind of stuff? Have you personally experienced that?
Like gender discrimination?
Yeah.
Or even like a person of color and you write about them and they're like, well, how would you know what I've gone through? 'Cause
Oh.
obviously,
Even from a publisher or from, you know,
Yeah.
when you're pitching something, it's like, well, I think Bob might do a better job of that, you know. You run into any of that stuff? Or is that a bygone era, perhaps?
Well, I think it seems to be very true that for women to be taken seriously in any field, they really do have to be twice as good. They do have to have twice the credentials. And this is one of the reasons. This is one of the reasons that I have gone to graduate school, was to, well, of course, I wanted to enrich my knowledge and my life by understanding literature more, and of course, education. But there were times when I would submit a proposal to my agent about a particular topic, and the feedback that we got was, well, they just don't think you're really an expert in this. I did get that. And
wow.
I don't know if that was gender related or class related or what that was. It could be any number of things. And just as a woman who's been out in the workforce for a long time, every woman has stories about, I'm not going to say I had any sexual assaults or anything,
Right.
but there is so much sexism in little things that are said to you.
When I do film work, like the ratio of a woman director and producer compared to a male producer and director, it's insane. There must be 50 to 100 men to every woman in this industry. And it's hard. Like, if you're a woman, like, I've asked to direct stuff and they're like, well, we don't know if you'll be able to do it. And it's like, excuse me? I can do this just fine.
The reason I wanted to bring that up was that did that give you motivation? I mean, because you've excelled, you've gained great success, and I was just wondering if that was something that propelled you to prove them wrong. Like somebody,
I know it did for me.
You're underestimated, and you say, "No, I'm going to show you who I really am," and then that helps motivate you. Do you think that's true?
Well, I wouldn't say that I have been motivated by proving people wrong, that as a woman I'm not up to snuff. I wouldn't say that. Have been more motivated by trying to prove to myself that I have what it takes to take on something.
That inner critic that you're always like, I can do this.
There's so much of that. And this is something we know from research too, that women second guess themselves all the time, particularly about running for office, let's say. They think they have to be political science majors or these total experts on policy and on foreign policy and have to have all of this knowledge and background and everything because that's just the way they are. And men, on the other hand, they never second guess themselves about that sort of thing. And I find it's not just true of the political sphere, but at least in my own experience, I had to talk myself into believing that, I can direct this script that I wrote because I know what I want. I know what it's going to look like. The whole thing is in my head.
You can see it playing, and
I can see it, and I know what I want from my actors, and so I haven't done it before, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it.
Right.
And you have to have those conversations with yourself.
Right.
And so much more of my experience has been about that, has been about overcoming my personal roadblocks, because I am advantaged, I'm privileged, I'm white, I'm in a culture that will look at me and let me navigate all of the systems freely.
Right.
Whereas a woman of color, that's just not a given at all.
Right.
Everything in my life is a given. And this is what we need to understand as white people, that it's everything is set up for us.
Right.
And a lot of things that we take for granted are not available to a lot of other people. So I'm very aware of that now. I didn't always have that
that outlook, the insight.
Yeah, but I do now. So.
I'm Sam Hedden with producer Andy Watson, and now you know Antonia Felix.
Or you can do it your way first, and then you can do it my way. And then we'll just see which is better.